Bad Boys are back in Bad Boys for Life, the long-awaited third entry in the series. This time around, a figure from the past wants payback, and age is getting to the Bad Boys, perhaps numbering their days in the Force. This is by far the best film in the Bad Boys series thus far, but that's not saying much. This film is more grounded and believable, and it has a more personal and focused story. It isn't another example of bad guys doing bad things so the cops have to stop them. This means that the story is more engaging and easier to follow than past entries, and it makes far more sense, with less over-the-top action scenes throughout. However, while the story is a big step above the previous films, the film does have problems. There are certain twists and revelations that come across as corny and unnecessary, although they add depth to certain characters and the film as a whole. There are also a lot of scenes that simply didn't need to be in the film, such as a comedic conversation on an airplane that doesn't add or explain much of any importance. Luckily, the action scenes are okay. They're less extravagant and ridiculous in comparison to the prior films, instead presented as gritty and gory. They're fun and they fit into the film well, but outside of a motorcycle chase with a helicopter, none stand out as something special or interesting. Similarly, the comedy is okay too. However, there isn't anything that's laugh out loud hilarious, and for every funny joke, there's a joke that simply doesn't work at all. What really works well is the mix of comedy and action and drama. The directors do a great job of balancing the tones, with only a couple of moments where they may have went too far with a silly joke. The characters are probably the main draw of the film. This time around, the buddy cop relationship between the leads is really well executed. They come across as longtime friends with a bickering marriage sort of relationship. It's clear that the two characters like each other despite their annoyances and flaws. This came across as more antagonistic in prior films, resulting in an odd, confusing couple. It helps this time around that the two leads have more depth, with an added focus on their private lives, making them more relatable. The supporting characters, with one exception, don't fare quite as well. The villains are bland and corny, with questionable backstories and perhaps even supernatural elements, neither of which fit into the film or world all that well. The new characters supporting the main duo are also a bit bland. They're not all that well developed, having only been given simple traits such as being a dick or being a tech guy. They also don't get much to do in the film either, often being in scenes just for the hell of it. It's especially disappointing when one of them is played by a significant name, Vanessa Hudgens, but she barely says or does anything in the entire film. The only character that is a standout is Joe Pantoliano's Captain, returning from the prior movies. He gets some of the best lines and the best scenes in the whole film, and his somewhat over-the-top performance adds to the fun of the film. In terms of production, this film is more grounded, gritty and realistic than the prior films, possibly because of its smaller budget, but also because Michael Bay didn't direct it. The lighting and score work in tandem to build a mood and tone, coming across as constantly cool throughout. While there are some unnecessary scenes, the film also flies by, and it's shorter than the last entry in the series. Bad Boys for Life is by far the best in the franchise so far. It's less over the top and ridiculous, with a better, more grounded story. The action and comedy, while not outstanding, are good, making for a film that's fun and enjoyable despite its flaws. Before I go into a couple of spoilers, you should subscribe to this channel to see more reviews like this. Also, why not follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. Now though, if you haven't seen Bad Boys for Life, you should probably leave and come back after seeing it, because it's time for full spoilers. The big reveal in the film is that the villain is Will Smith's character's son. It's really corny and cheesy, and it took me out of the film. It felt completely unnecessary, and it dove the film into ridiculous territory akin to the previous movies. I didn't like this element at all. The final point I want to make is that the captain dies. This was disappointing because he was one of the best characters in the film. His death was suitably sad, and it added to the commotion and motivation behind the main narrative. However, after briefly grieving over his death, the characters do seem to forget about him pretty quickly.